does help, doesn't it? Good morning. Not a good start. Good morning to everybody. Welcome to this meeting, the Avon Scrutiny Committee. My name's Trevor Harvey. I shall be chairing the meeting. Housekeeping matters, as you are totally familiar with. There's no fire evacuation due. I have to say, I was in last Friday, and at about 10 to 12, I was upstairs in the planning department and the alarm went off and we all had to troop out. So it does happen. If it does happen, it's for real. And the second matter is, of course, microphones. Make sure that members of the public who are watching have the benefit of your wisdom by making sure that you speak into the microphone as and when. On that basis then, can we deal with the first item, which is apologies?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Alcock, for who Councillor Ballinger is substituting, and apologies from Councillor Keithley, for who Councillor Jenny Fradgley is substituting.
Thank you very much. Disclosures of interest. Do we have any disclosures of interest? Councillor Ballinger.
Good morning, Chair. Just want to make members aware with the added sheet that has been placed on the table, mark the title of 3 tons, 34 High Street. I am the ward member for that, and I will be stepping away from the meeting when anything is discussed regarding that item.
Thank you, Councillor. Noted. Item 3, minutes of previous meeting. 2 meetings, actually. First of all, meeting on the 1st of July. Can I raise one matter from the chair? On page 2, 2/3 of the way down the page, it says, it was confirmed by the Chief Executive that the final structure changes order would be delayed until March 2027. On the next page, bullet point number 3 says, the draft structural changes order is due in the autumn of 2026. My understanding it is the spring of 27 rather than the autumn. Can anybody confirm or otherwise?
Yes, my understanding through the chair is that the order is due in 20. Hang on, let me get this right. It is due in the autumn of 2026, but I think the minute says it could be delayed until 2027 because we haven't. It's a question of sort of parliamentary time with the existing structural changes orders. They've got to delay whether they can get them all in or not in the autumn.
So the key word is in the first contribution, could be, and on that basis, I think that minute stands as it is. Are there any other comments on the minutes of that particular meeting?
Sorry, Chair. One other point that Hannah's helpfully pointed out. One refers to the draft order and then the final order. So we will get the draft in advance of the final order, which is another point the committee should be aware of. So we're expecting the draft, but it probably won't be confirmed in Parliament until 2027.
So my lack of attention to detail was that I missed the distinction between final and draft.
Yours and mine both, it would seem.
Thank you. That's fine. I have one other matter, which is the minute 87 under urgent business. I think I understand why it was suggested and agreed that we should have meetings or presentations from the representatives of both Shakespeare Hospice and Shipston Home Nursing. However, I am very conscious that that the OSC does not have any powers to make decisions to commit resources. So it would be one thing for representatives of those 2 charities to come and make representations and tell us what their business is and how it impacts upon the district. However, I don't think there is a role for them to, I don't think there's a role for us to encourage them to believe that the OSC can initiate the question of whether the council as a whole might help address their financial circumstances. I think if that is what they want, and I can understand that that could be what they want, that it seems to me that that is a matter that is better pursued direct with the Cabinet, which has authority to commit resource, which the OSC doesn't have. That's my view. Now, I'm quite happy to have a brief discussion about the matter. Councillor Rolfe.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and since that, Councillor David Curtis has contacted me and in fact has been in touch with the Shakespeare Hospice, and things are, that dialogue is happening. The initial reason was not for them to ask for money, it was to actually help people on this committee understand exactly what they do, because I don't think everybody does understand what the hospice and Shipston home nursing do. But that was the initial reason. If things do progress with the portfolio holder for finance, then perhaps it might come back here or it might go to Cabinet. But thank you.
Thank you for that. Can we leave that particular matter on the basis then that you, Councillor Rolfe, will keep the OSC informed about whether we want to take action and proceed with that particular item? Thank you very much. Moving on to minutes of the meeting on the 13th of July. Do we have any comments, questions or corrections? I have one question. Bottom of page 10. I think, if my memory serves me right, Councillor Worley-Hoggins raised the issue about brownfield sites, and it was agreed that a document be produced and presented at a future meeting. I wonder if anybody is in a position to tell us what the timescale for the presentation of that information might be. Councillor Worley-Hoggins.
Was I actually here on the 13th of July? I don't think I was.
Only in spirit, it appears.
I did give my apologies to the meeting.
But on the substantive point, do we have a time? Can anybody tell us if there's a timetable for the production of that information? Because in the context of the discussion about local plan, I think there is interest in that particular piece of information.
I don't have a timetable, but I can take that away and try and get something either by the end of the meeting, or we can send a note round to that effect.
I don't think it's that urgent that it needs to be done before the end of this particular meeting, but if it could be done before the end of the week, that would be fine.
Excellent.
On that basis, then, we're happy with the minutes. I take it, and I hear no opposition. I'll take those as approved. Thank you. Chair's brief. I have a few items. The first and perhaps most important is that I owe an apology to a particular individual member of staff, and that is Joe Bosdog-Garnley. And the reason for that is that you may recall last meeting, you may or may not recall, but Ms. Bosdog-Garnley certainly does, that when we referred to each other, we referred to each other formally as Councillor this or Mr. that, or whatever. And Joe Bosdog-Garnley was the only person who was referred to by her forename. And that, I think, could be interpreted as a lack of respect for the individual concerned. That was not the case on my part at all. I have spoken to Joe Bosdog-Garnley yesterday and apologised in person, and I would like to place on record a public apology that my inability, as you can tell, to struggle with pronunciation of her name was the only reason why I took the easy route and referred to her by her forename. So I offer my public apology to her, and I'm pleased to say that she graciously accepted my private apology yesterday. Moving on. Urgent business. There is an item, well, I will take it that there is no comment to be had on the en-bloc items later on the agenda. Nobody has told me that they want to discuss that, so we will deal with that as en bloc. There is an item of urgent business, and you have a paper in front of you There is further information on a blue piece of paper, which you haven't got yet, and you won't have until we go into private session, confidential session later on in the meeting. This is an important matter in itself, and it's an important matter for the committee, because the Cabinet at its next meeting has to take a decision in relation to the matter under discussion. And this is an opportunity for the OSC members to express their point of view and give their opinion and advice to the Cabinet before the decision is made. So the secondary reason for mentioning that is that we need to be careful with our time. That is not a matter to be rushed, and therefore I just make you aware that it would be even more appropriate than usual for contributions to be short, sharp, succinct, and to the point. Thank you. Councillor Worley-Hoggins.
Yes. The majority of people coming in here today are currently scrabbling around trying to read the document in front of them, and that is no way to conduct an essential piece of business here, given what I assume is the staggering sums of money that are going to be involved in this. So what I would ask, two questions here. Do we need to adjourn before we discuss this item so that people can have adequate time in order to consider the implications from this? And I would also like some confirmation that all that is on the blue papers is the monetary aspect, the particular financial aspects, because I'm referring to the blue papers on the Cabinet papers here is a tiny piece of paper here with about 5 columns of figures there. So I do not wish, I don't think it's appropriate, that this matter here, the 3 tonnes, is discussed under confidential items. In fact, I don't think it's right at all, and I will give you reasons for that. The only things that should be on blue papers and for consideration, and we can consider those before we go into debate, as long as we don't mention them, is the figures of money involved, because I understand that particularly one figure only one figure, the purchase price that we might put to it, is the market sensitive information. The rest of it is surely fact. And this is really important, because if you want to go into closed session to discuss the whole of this, then there are some very serious legal implications, which, because I've been forewarned this was coming, I've actually researched. So this matters and it needs to be discussed.
Thank you for that. This is an urgent matter in the sense of information is being accumulated and has been accumulated over the past few days. Officers, I think, have acted as quickly as possible. It was, of course, my intention that there be adequate time for all members to read the papers in front of them. So I was quite happy to have, I am quite happy and was intending to have an adjournment in order that people are informed before that we have the discussion. As far as the way I intend to deal with the discussion, I am going to invite Mr. Perks to introduce the paper in public. And once that has been done and any questions of fact relating to the paper being discussed and addressed, we will then go into closed session based upon the availability of the blue piece of paper, which does have simple, straightforward figures. There are no, as far as I haven't seen it, but I have seen a draft. I haven't seen the final document, but as far as I'm aware, there's no 5 columns of complicated information. So that's my ruling, and that's how I'm going to deal with it. Thank you. On that basis, is there anybody else who wants to make a contribution? Councillor Crump.
Yeah, honestly, I think, thank you for agreeing and clarifying how it's going to be managed. That's very helpful. So I think that's pretty good. As an ex-officer myself, I do appreciate the amount of work that goes into the reports and things that come in the last minute. But I would just like to express my concern. It's very disappointing. I know it's urgent, and urgent is urgent, no matter how many different ways you say it. But it's still disappointing to get the paper on the day of the meeting when it's concerning quite a substantial item that affects the whole of the district. So if we could get the information as soon as possible, whether this paper, the draft paper, could have been emailed out to members of the committee to read, with the acknowledgement we may have to go into an adjournment and discuss things in confidential. That might have been helpful as well. Yeah, it's not like we're going back 20 or 30 years when we didn't have email and the possibility of sending things out.
Thank you for that. I understand the sensitivity and in terms of time. I think officers have done their best in the circumstances. I'm sure they've taken note. The point I would make is that the Cabinet meets next Monday and it has to come to a decision. I give you my reassurance again that I will allow sufficient time for people to read the paper and have thoughts, and we will debate the matter thoroughly. Councillor Littlewood.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Just following on from that, and a point of clarification, if I may. I noticed that this is a draft document. In what way is it envisaged that this document might be changed before it goes to Cabinet, please?
I'm going to postpone that until we have the discussion. Thank you for the point. Councillor Worley-Hoggins.
So can you confirm that we will be discussing this, this matter in open forum so that the public can see the discussion, please? Because if we don't do that...
Can I just halt you there? I think that's what I said. Thank you. Moving on. Public participation. Do we have any notification of members of the public who wish to participate in the meeting?
No, Chair.
No, we don't. Thank you for that. We'll move on. Can I invite Hannah Buckley to address the meeting, please?
Thank you, Chair. So before you've got a paper which relates to cost of living support, you may remember that the origin of this is a discussion around whether or not it would be something that the OSC wanted to consider having a task and finish group arising out of the OSC to look further at this area. So this paper gives a real overview in terms of the support that's on offer, the level of demand that we've seen, some of the work that is already underway, and then proposes what a task and finish group might look at. So you'll see through the paper that the cost of living has been something that we've been talking about nationally now for a number of years and doesn't actually seem to be an issue that is settling or going away because of the geopolitical instability and the impact that that's having in terms of costs, particularly around utilities. There's then also a number of other factors that are sort of linking into that in terms of things like housing costs. So the report summarises what support we've got. It gives some insight into the level of demand that we see. So some of the biggest issues that we support citizens' advice who are sat outside on reception, and the co-location is really key for us, that people that walk through our front door can get that support immediately, because so many issues are linked. Somebody that's coming to talk to us about homelessness might also need some support in relation to benefits or debt advice, so that's a really key part of our offer. But then there's also a number of other things. So we've got the work that we do with Act on Energy in relation to support around energy bills, and then we've got the food bank funding as well. And the thing that we're seeing in relation to all of those is that whilst we aren't seeing any significant increases in demand other than the seasonal increases that you might expect, so across the sort of the 6 months, across sort of the autumn, winter, we do see about a 20% increase in demand, but you would expect to see that with people using more energy than they would be across those warmer months, across spring and summer. But other than that, it's relatively consistent, but it is also an ongoing need. And one of the things that we've done some work with our partners around is understanding, is that cohort the same people that are walking through the doors of the food bank every month, and that actually that this support has become part of their budgeting, or is it new people? And it's a mix. So we don't have anyone that is consistently reliant on this support as part of their budget, but we do have individuals that will be seen frequently across the year. And then we've also got a number of people that the first time they walk through the door of any one of these services, that's the first time that they have sought additional support. And there's a multitude of reasons for that. So you've got individuals who effectively there isn't very much given their budget at all, that they are managing and they are managing month on month, but something happens. So they might need a repair to a car. That's a sort of a one-off expense, but they just haven't got that flexibility within their budget. Or we have things where people's finances change. So it might be a relationship breakdown, it might be unemployment, and then that's about not just that kind of the how do we bridge the gap that they've got that month, but then that more extended work with them, which might be through these agencies, but it can also be through signposting in relation to how do we support them to get to a point where they can manage within their budget and that they're maximising their benefit entitlement. And that's one of the key things that the Citizens Advice Service reach out and helped us. That's the most common item that people talk to them about is benefit entitlement. And you can see from the stats the impact of that in relation to how that helped people to increase their income. So the task and finish group, in terms of what that could look at, and I should just say, if you don't feel that a task and finish group is the way forward, we will still be doing this work. So it's purely about whether or not you feel that it's something that you can add benefit to and want to shape. So the task and finish group would undertake a more detailed scrutiny of our approach to explore the demand and need patterns over time, and that's particular about how we might overlay looking at the demand by postcodes and really understanding what that's driving. Because I can tell you, for example, the top 6 areas for energy support, but they're all also the more urban areas. So actually, is that telling us that those are the areas most in need, or is that telling us that those are the areas where our services are most accessible? And then the other thing that we're going to be doing is we are developing some dashboards. So you'll know that that's an action in the council plan, that by the end of September we'll have dashboards across housing and revenues that outline some of our key demands. And one of the dashboards that we're going to introduce is one that looks across all of those areas, that has a particular focus around cost of living, so that we can see, for example, lots of different metrics that individually tell us about those particular areas, but collectively start to give us a picture in terms of what are the pressures across the district. So that might be the number of homelessness approaches, the number of housing benefit claimants, the number of requests we get for discretionary support for council tax reduction. And so pulling all of those figures together. So again, we will progress all of these items of work. It's just whether or not that it would be something of interest to yourselves in terms of having a task and finish group to shape that work.
Thank you for that introduction. As you will recall, several months ago, I made a somewhat ham-fisted attempt to initiate a task and finish group on the basis of trying to align what the council currently provides in terms of help towards cost of living in connection with the budget, which currently is in preparation at various stages. And my ham-fisted approach was squashed quite rightly in the circumstances. I understand that. I'm very interested to know whether you support having some sort of involvement, because it seems to me that this does provide an opportunity for a task and finish group to paint a picture of what the council does provide to influence future policy about what might need change, what is justified currently, what might be justified in the future, and for that the output to be available to other councillors to have a better understanding of what the council does provide in relation to help for cost of living. On that basis, I'm quite happy that we should have an open discussion about the merits and otherwise. I think Councillor Worley-Hoggins had her hand up first.
Yes, I think this gives us a unique opportunity to be as nimble as we possibly can as a council towards an ever, at the moment, seemingly an ever deteriorating situation, really. And I think that by being part of this, I would hope that we can offer support as well to officers. The track record of task and finish groups has been very, very good, and I actually welcome the opportunity. Obviously would very much like to be part of this, but thank you so much for bringing this report to us and for giving us this opportunity. I think it's wonderful and really puts Stratford District Council at the front foot as far as the most vulnerable of our residents are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston.
I'm afraid I take a rather different view. Task and finish group starting now is probably going to take some months to consider its conclusions, and if that takes us towards the formation of the shadow unitary, I'm not sure what good we're going to be able to contribute until we see what the shape of that is. If the dashboard is going ahead anyway, I don't see why that's relevant to have a task and finish group slowing it down. And I would generally be, I would not be supportive of setting up a task and finish group.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Littlewood.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not quite sure I agree with Councillor Johnson totally there. I understand what his point of view is, but I note here, and I think it's very encouraging that in drafting this paper, the reference to the new unitary authority has been made. That raises a question in itself, but to go back to the comments in the introduction that talked about urban areas being more demanding, I wonder if that is a case of understanding that such services exist. And I think it is not surprising that there's less demand in rural areas, not because of any difference in economic situations, but from knowledge of what's available, and also a different attitude towards asking for help outside of their own close community. I do have a question though, and that is that we are going into a unitary authority, and I do agree with Councillor Johnson's point about the short lifetime of this authority as it stands. However, life does go on after the early May, and there will be a continuing continuation of a council, either being shadow or otherwise. So my question is this: how are councillors in Warwick District Council going to be involved in this? Because if there is a task and finish group set up, it must be across both councils, and legally is that a possibility?
I don't know the answer to that. I wonder if there's an officer who does. Well, there's two questions there. One is what involvement does Warwick have at the moment, and secondly, is there a legal authority for two councils ahead of reorganisation to cooperate in this particular way?
So I'll answer both of those, but please feel free to come in about the legality if you want to, because my point is not going to be about the legality at all. So in relation to the joint working with Warwick, one of the things that you'll see is referred to in the paper is that the county convened a meeting. So after our initial discussion, in the intervening period across the summer months, the county convened a meeting with all of the district and boroughs and county. There were a number of councillors that were present at that, and one of the focuses there was to look at what we've got across the entire county in terms of the support that's on offer. We talked about some of the challenges and opportunities as part of that. So there is a piece of work that's underway, and there's an argument about whether this can feed into it or not. In terms of legality, I don't think we necessarily need a legal structure for us to convene a joint working group across South Warwickshire. I guess it's just about what appetite there is. Clearly, we can't force anybody's hand in relation to that, but there there clearly is an appetite to do some joint working across the county. We know that from the attendance at the meeting that was held, I think, at the end of July. So that would be my view. There's nothing to stop us working with South Warwickshire.
Thank you for that. Yes, by all means.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. That's quite clear. It seems to me, therefore, that this paper before us needs to be amended, and I suggest the amendment should refer to what you've just said, and that part of the actions before we get going is to approach the other two authorities to see if a joint working group can be convened.
Thank you. Councillor Rice was next. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Hannah, for the paper. I detected a certain amount of ambivalence in your report just now as to whether you think that a task and finish group would be helpful. My impression from what you said was that the work will happen anyway, and I'm wondering whether a report in so many months' time back to this committee of what you have found would actually be the right way forward. One thing that strikes me about the paper you've produced is that it tells me what you are doing. It does not really, apart from maybe in one place, address what is the unmet need, and that is presumably the object of the task and finish group, and whether that could achieve any better results than the work you're going to achieve anyway. So I need to ask a question, Chair. And my question is, would you welcome a task and finish group overseeing what you already intend to do?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm sorry if it came across as ambivalent. I think what I was trying to say is I think there's a real role for a task and finish group here. And I think that you're representative of your members. You will know things about the district that might not necessarily be evident in terms of some of the challenges. And I'm going to refer back to the, for those of you that were involved in it, the health transport summit that we had. And I think some of the real challenges that came out through that in terms of I could only get to an appointment at 2 o'clock because any other time the one bus in and the one bus out that goes to my village wouldn't enable me to attend that appointment if I'm reliant on public transport. It's some of those nuances that are really helpful in terms of us being able to diagnose what that potential unmet need is, because we don't know. I'm incredibly honest and transparent. If I knew there was a screaming need that we weren't meeting, it would be in this paper and it would have been in the council plan in terms of we need to tackle this. This is about saying, actually, we've got all of these measures. We know that they're incredibly effective, but are we missing anyone? Is there an opportunity to take our existing offer and enhance it? It's not a criticism of the existing offer. It's clearly needed. It's clearly working well. It's making a huge difference. I think one of the stats that Citizens Advice provide us as part of the feedback is about the impact. Has this service made a difference to you? And the stats are consistently 100%. That people feel that it's made a significant difference to them. So we know that what we've got is working well. The bit that we're not clear on is, could it be working better? And that's where I think a task and finish group could add help. But I was also just giving you some reassurance that if you say no, that doesn't mean that we're not going to do anything, because clearly, you know, we're committed to this, and my portfolio holders sat at the back. It's one of the things that we talk about all of the time in relation to, are the interventions we've got in place meeting the needs of the district? And us understanding it more will help in terms of going into a much larger unitary area, because if we've got a small area that's currently being left behind, that's going to be a much smaller area in a much bigger pool. So I think it's pretty critical that we do understand that, and it helps to shape those arrangements going forward.
Councillor Rice, a very simple but very perceptive and effective question which received a thorough and supportive answer. Thank you for your contribution. Councillor Rolfe?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I attended only half of the cost of living conference because I was elsewhere for the first half. I think it would be hugely beneficial to this committee if we had a breakdown pertinent to South Warwickshire rather than the whole of Warwickshire of that meeting and what is being provided and what isn't being provided, and that way, and what you are doing also within this council, and that way we can then, if something is brought forward in 3 or 4 months' time, we can then scrutinise that as a committee, because then we can talk about what might be missing and what needs to be done. I think you're covering most of it anyway, and I fear for any kind of duplication of work from officers. So my recommendation would be to wait. Let's have that report back. Let's have the stats in front of us for those that didn't go to that conference. I mean, I can't remember what was said, you know. So I'd like to see it in paper, and then I think we need to scrutinise it, and then perhaps make a decision on a task and finish group, because I think a task and finish group should not be just from this committee. If we are going to do it, it needs to be from other areas within this council, and we have rulings about that. So I would like to delay it, if possible, until we see the report. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Can you say anything about the availability of information that Councillor Rolfe has referred to?
There were certainly, so there were some slides and some minutes from that group. I can check with the county if they're happy for me to circulate them. I can't imagine that there would be any reservations, but just on a point of courtesy, I would like to check, and then I can share them with everybody.
Thank you for that. Councillor Passing was next.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think it would be very useful for us as councillors to be better informed about this, and just in terms of our work going forward for the next few months. I mean, but I do take the point about joint working with Warwick would be useful, and I do take the point that we haven't got long left as an authority.
We've got 19 months left, not a few
So,
months. Sorry,
yeah,
Mr. Chair.
yeah. But in terms of a task and finish group, 19 months isn't that long because we've been doing a couple of the task and finish groups for about 2 years. But in principle, I think it'd be good. But so yeah, be interesting to go forward with it, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Fradley.
Thank you, Chair. It seems to me you're asking that the task and finish group should be going in more depth and actually bringing information that you might not have to the work that you're doing. For me, a task and finish group is often too narrow, and it doesn't include other councillors who have intense interest and knowledge in these areas. So it seems to me that it would be more beneficial after more of this information we've just been talking about is brought forward. We have a workshop for the whole of the council, and each councillor could bring their experiences to that workshop. So you could gather information from all councillors who have the responsibility of representing their voters.
Thank you. Councillor Crump.
I don't know whether it's the fact that I got stuck in traffic in 2 sets of traffic lights, but grumpy over here is totally disagreeing. We've had this officer recommendation or advice after a clear and transparent question from Councillor Rice that she would welcome a task and finish group to do this, to look into things that we don't see. That workshop is a waste of time, is my point, because we're here to scrutinise. We do task and finish. We invite other people from different parts of the council to come, so therefore their points are taken in. So again, we're going around in circles. But the whole point here is we have a duty to help our residents, both in the short term and the long term. Oh, we're not going to be here much longer. Yes, we are. We've got 19 months. And if we get our finger out, our act into gear, I'm trying to change different words there, we could get something done. If we started the task and finish group in October, we have a 3 months concentrated programme, we report back in January, and those implications, financial implications, could be then part of the budget process, which would run from 1st of April 27 to the 1st of April 28. So you would have 12 months benefit. And I don't think our residents care who helps them, whether it's the district council, whether it's the county council, whether it's South Warwickshire Unitary. And if we do this right, we put the building blocks in for our successor authority to take it on and make a difference. So I'm not buying it, even though as a tied accountant, I probably wouldn't spend any money anyway. But the whole point is, we've had the officer recommendation who they think it would helpful. We try and meet the people who are falling through the gaps. And the head of Housing, Revenue and Customer Services, sorry, Hannah, I couldn't remember the title, has made a point that the people who are slipping through the net now in the district council will be likely to slip through even more because they're a smaller proportion. So it's not rocket science. So I might be in a minority of one, but I think we should have one. And on the basis, we can invite other people to clue, but it should be based mainly on members of overview and scrutiny. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Crump. I get the impression you're in favour. Councillor Worley-Hoggins.
Yes, just to reiterate what Andy said, that, you know, Councillor Crump, that this is required. Our residents need us to step up and do this piece of work. We need to be nimble to then start talking about involving Warwick and Leamington in the work that we do for our residents. Yeah, that's worked really well with the South Warwickshire Local Plan. I think that we need to move forward at pace with this. I think given the number of people that are not interested in doing this or against it, means that only those with enthusiasm for seeing this forward can put themselves forward for the task and finish group. We are facing really difficult times ahead. This has to happen, and I commend the officer for bringing this to our attention and to invite us to set up this task and finish group, to be talking about not doing so, kicking the can down the line because of devolution. I'm deeply concerned about that attitude.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there anybody who wants to make a contribution which is going to raise something, a different point, or express a different point of view? Councillor Rolfe.
Yes, just following on from what Councillor Worley-Hoggins said. I'm going to go back to the original question. Should we be doing this with Warwick, or should we be doing it on our own? Because that is a really important question. If we do it with Warwick, it's going to take a lot longer to set up. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've had a thorough debate. There are different points of view. I am not going to summarise. I'm going to ask for a vote. I have the implication that if this recommendation were accepted, that the next stage would be that we would ask for terms of reference, specific terms of reference for this working group, which we could consider at our next meeting, and then if we go down that route, kick it off. Is it relevant, Councillor Johnson?
If you're going to move to a vote, I think Councillor Fradgley made a specific alternative proposition that we find ways of engaging all members of the council in this activity. And I don't want us just to turn down task and finish group. We need to endorse the dashboard. We need to look at means of involving all members and find some way of involving Warwick district members as well. And that's the kind of alternative. I don't want us to turn this down without putting something else in place.
I'm not going to go down that route. I'm going to rely upon the fact that to address the issues of involvement that Councillor Rolfe raised, that Councillor Crump made the point that all councillors would be invited to provide evidence to the task and finish group if it's agreed. So I'm going to proceed on the basis of the recommendation as it stands. I'm happy on that basis. Councillor Rice.
Sorry, Councillor Harvey. Sorry, Chair. Just a quick question. The composition of the task and finish group, will it be restricted to this committee, or because this argument has come up, or sorry, this discussion has come up in the past, I would like to know before I vote on it what I'm voting for in terms of who will be on this task and finish group, or who will be allowed to be on this task and finish group.
I'll wait for an officer to contradict me, but I'm under the impression that it is perfectly possible for people who are not members of the OSC to be invited to participate in a task and finish group. Am I correct? That's the case. So I would presume that if there is support for this recommendation, that the next stage would be to agree a set of terms of reference and composition of the working group. That's my anticipated understanding. We are getting. Are we really dealing? Are we going to hear anything which is going to prevent us or influence us considering this recommendation?
I think we are. I think your word about participating is very pertinent. The last task and finish group that was allowed, the housing one, social housing, we did not allow people from outside of this group to take part, but we were allowed to invite other councillors, and that didn't really work. What I'm trying to ask you is, will other councillors from outside of this group be part of the task and finish group, or will they just be invited?
My understanding is that they can be invited to participate as a member of the task and finish group. Tell me if I'm wrong. So we're not talking about people being asked to give evidence. We're talking about people being invited to be members of the task and finish group if they've got particular interest and experience.
Yes, just again a point of order, just challenging that point from Councillor Rolfe, that people were invited to give evidence, but it didn't work.
I'm not interested.
It's a relevant point.
Councillor Crump, I'm not interested in the history.
No,
I'm interested in the future.
it is pertinent to the point, because if we got to learn from our mistakes, which I don't believe it was a mistake, so therefore I would seek a clear terms of reference of who can be invited and what their roles are, and also make sure that the vast majority on the task and finish group is members of the OSC, because it won't be an OSC task and finish group if the vast majority are non-OSC members. Just that point.
I take the point. The intention would be it has to be an OSC task and finish group. What we're talking about, we're not talking about the majority of. I'm not talking. I'll speak for myself. My understanding is that the majority of members of a task and finish group set up by the OSC will be OSC members, and that there is still an avenue for the OSC to agree to the nomination of other councillors to participate as members of that task and finish group, but it's subject to the consent of the OSC as a body. It's not my individual point of view. It's not. It's as a body we would make that decision, and we would address that at the appropriate time.
Thank you. That's reassuring.
Yes, if it would help, Chair. I think perhaps we're getting into a little more detail and we haven't established the principle. If it would help the committee, if you took a decision on the principle of establishing a task and finish group, I would be happy for Mrs. Buckley to produce a set of terms of reference for the next meeting, which we can circulate in advance, so that if we decide to have it, we can refine the detail of it at a slightly later date. But I endorse the principles of the chairman, said it needs to be OSC led, but there's precedent for other members being on the group, and we can cover that in the terms of reference that we can debate at a later point.
I think it's, again, the emphasis, what you mean by OSC led. So therefore, yeah, in terms of, and again, it relates to political balance. If you're inviting other members to participate, we do have to have some political balance, I believe, as well. So
this is we're
Just
getting...
getting it out in the open, thank you.
Yeah,
I accept your
un-
points, Mr.
I
Chairman.
understand that, and you're getting ahead of the decision. We need to come to a view as to whether the recommendation as proposed in the paper is acceptable or not. Can I ask all those in favour to show, please? I think that's unanimous bar one. Are those against? One against. No abstentions then. Thank you for that. A useful debate. Our next item is item 7, an update on devolution and local government reorganisation. I presume that's Mr. Perks.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'll give a brief update of where we are with the local government reorganisation process, and I'm obviously happy to take any questions on conclusion of the brief presentation. As we're aware, that the decision was made by government on the 16th of July to support the creation of 2 unitary authorities for Warwickshire, North Warwickshire Council in the north and South Warwickshire Council in the south. I think we're all quite well aware, but just to recap, the things that the government sort of found attractive in that was that the unitary proposals reflected the county's sort of different economies, identities and demographics. It gave a good integration between housing and planning policies, and it allowed greater flexibility for sort of devolution sort of going forward. So we're now in the second of 4 phases of local government reorganisation, sort of post-decision. And the next sort of key milestone that we will be working towards, or we are working towards, is the election of the shadow councils, which are currently scheduled for the 4th of May 2027. In terms of work that we've got ongoing at the moment, the government are consulting on the draft structural changes order that will bring these councils into being, and got to mention earlier in the meeting. It's likely to be approved by Parliament in sort of February, March 2027, but we'll have a draft in advance of that hopefully this autumn. The main points that have been debated so far are sort of the divisions or boundaries that they used for the councillors. The government proposal, which we are essentially going to have to sort of go with, is that the existing county council divisions will be used for the first set of elections. There will generally be 2 councillors elected to each former county division to reflect the additional sort of workload of the 2 authorities coming together. There are 2 wards which have got sufficient voter imbalance that the interim solution there will be 3 members within those county divisions. Those are Budbrook and Bishop's Tatchbrook and Bidford and Welford, so one in the former Warwick area, one in our area. And that will result in a South Warwickshire Council of 56 members. And the returning officer for the election to the Shadow Authority has been determined to be Chris Elliott of Warwick, so he will be responsible for conducting that election. Recognising that is perhaps not a perfect solution, there's been a commitment that the Local Government Boundary Commission for England will review those warding arrangements or divisional arrangements. And we've made a request in our sort of feedback that happens within the first cycle of the unitary council. Obviously, that would be a challenge for the boundary commission because there's a lot of the country to sort of get round, but we feel it's important that is sort of looked at within the first cycle. In terms of things that happen next, then, a joint committee will need to be established ahead of these elections for both the North and the South Warwickshire District Council. That's got a sort of number of responsibilities. The government have determined the representation on that joint committee, and there will be 6 members from Warwickshire County Council. There'll be 3 from Stratford and 3 from Warwick on the South Warwickshire option. On the North Warwick option, it'll be 6 members from the county and then 2 from each of the forming districts, Rugby, North Warwick and Nuneaton. And the main sort of functions of that joint committee are agreeing the creation of the implementation team. The senior responsible officer for that, for local government reorganisation throughout Warwickshire, is Monica Fogarty, the Chief Exec at Warwick, and she's supported by 2 deputies who have been determined to be David Buckland for the South and Tom Shardlow for the North. He's the Chief Executive of Nuneaton, for those who don't know him. And that group will develop proposals for the implementation team about how we will implement local government across Warwickshire. The other functions that the Joint Committee will have, it's almost like the preparatory committee for the Shadow Authority is the way I'm sort of looking at this. They'll develop proposals for the new council to be able to agree a leader and a cabinet governance model. They'll start looking at the draft code of conduct for South Warwickshire, which will be considered by the Shadow Authority at its first meeting. They'll start to look at things like a draft scheme of allowances for members of the new authority, the constitution, and all of these things will be approved at the first meeting of the Shadow Authority. And they'll also make recommendations to this first meeting of the South Warwickshire Authority about the interim appointments for the 3 statutory officers, so your Head of Paid Service and Chief Executive, Section 151 Officer and Monitoring Officer for the South Warwickshire Council. That will be one of the first jobs that will be approved by the Shadow Authority on recommendation of the Joint Committee. So we have the elections in May, and between then and vesting day of 2028, the Shadow Authority have a number of tasks. They need to make permanent statutory officer appointments to the roles that I've just mentioned, because you have the interims until you've made permanent appointments. Their job is to start to prepare the vision and the operating model, the real sort of detail of how the council work, the ways of working, the policies and the budget, and they have to get that sort of ready for a go-live date of the 1st April 2028. So after the elections, May 27, there's quite a lot of work to do to get sort of things up and running. That starts to get things started on the 1st of April. Another key task is agreeing how the budget is divided between the North and South Warwickshire councils. Those of you sort of with a keen eye on these things will notice we had a 3-year financial settlement from the government recently. The 3rd year of that will become the settlement for the 2 councils. So there is 1 year where it will need to be divided. Following that, the future financial settlements will reflect the new geography of the South and the North Warwickshire councils, but there is 1 year of the existing settlement that will need to be divided between the 2, and that will be a task that will fall to the Shadow Authorities. They'll also need to determine Section 24 direction issues. Now, these are the directions that we've talked about before here, but controlled expenditure of sort of significant sums of capital, over £1 million, or revenue decisions of over £100,000 that aren't already set within sort of the predecessor council's budget. So this is sort of expenditure going forward, where the Shadow Authority will have influence on that when it takes sort of full jurisdiction. They have an interest in sort of those matters, and that's something that they're going to need to talk about. Alongside this, we have a paper, this is going back to sort of district council sort of business, that's going to be considered by a cabinet in October, which looks at community asset transfers with a sort of new shape of local government. There have been questions about, well, what things are better sort of held by parishes and towns. So we have a paper that establishes a protocol, or proposes the establishment of a protocol to allow sort of some of those assets to be transferred, and some criteria around which they should be measured. That will be going to cabinet in October. And then there's a further white paper expected in autumn relating to devolution. And this starts to deal with the potential strategic authorities for South Warwickshire, which is particularly important to the new Prime Minister. We are supposed to have devolution sort of throughout the UK, or certainly throughout England. And Warwickshire will need to position itself within a strategic authority. The potential options for how we might do this would be full membership of the West Midlands Combined Authority, although the current Mayor, Richard Parker, has effectively ruled that out at the moment. We are still in discussion with the West Midlands Combined Authority about our potential future relationship with them, but at the moment that isn't a door that's open to us. So the other options would be a standalone Warwickshire Strategic Authority, either mayoral or non-mayoral, or we would have to join with some other local authority areas, and examples of that could be sort of Herefordshire and Worcestershire. That's a very live debate at the moment. I don't have a sort of further update other than that sort of being looked at. And it's a slightly moving feast. We had some recent announcements about further powers relating to income tax and sort of business rates moving to mayoral areas. And that may sort of influence the decision. That was certainly of interest to the Combined Authority when they started looking at the impacts tax implications. And there's a clear expectation from government that all areas of the country will be covered by strategic authority at the end of this Parliament. So I think that's the conclusion of my sort of presentation, but happy to take any questions.
I'm sure there'll be some questions. Councillor Worley-Hoggins.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Perks. You indicated that there were going to be three members of this council represented on the sort of working committee.
Joint committee.
Joint committee. Who are they? Who is representing us, please?
I don't think we have an official decision on that yet.
When will we know then? When it's such a difficult task?
I'll have to report back to you on that. I don't know which date that's being formally decided, what the decision-making process of that is.
I presume that's a cabinet decision rather than an officer decision. I presume, but I don't know.
Yes, I would presume the same.
Councillor Crump?
Just following on from that, will there be a decision made on Monday at Cabinet under urgent business?
I'm sure the leader of the council heard that and will take that into account. Can I ask a question? There comes a point where the shadow authority will appoint the three statutory officers. I presume we're talking about three: the accounting officer, 151, and the monitoring officer. If any of the existing incumbents from either Stratford or Warwick secured any of those three posts, would that mean that for a year they would wear two hats?
I'm slightly speculating in my answer here, but from an informed position, because we've had discussions about it, we don't feel it would be appropriate for people to act in those two roles. So in that situation, you would, I suppose, use your deputy to sort of ensure that where there were conflicts of interest, they were properly managed. But we haven't fully thought through the implications of that because we don't know if the situation is occurring.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. Listening to your presentation, Tony, the words authority and responsibility occurred to me. At what point does the new shadow authority have both authority and responsibility on the, it'll probably be the 3rd of April, won't it, rather than the 1st, because that's a Saturday, I think.
Yes, I think your point about the 1st and the 3rd are not lost. They have to be formed on the 1st, which is some act of statute, but I suspect more work will be done on the 3rd than the 1st. Again, this is a slightly sort of personal view on the transfer of power, and I do see it as a transition. At the moment, we've got sort of the majority of power sitting with the existing authorities. Once we get the joint committee and we start to get the shadow council elected, and we get closer to vesting day and the Section 24 notices sort of kick in, power will, I think, sort of transfer. The future will be in the shadow authority. The existing councils will have a role of sort of representing their residents and sort of effectively seeing their council through to the end of the term. But I think it'll be a gradual transition over to the new South Warwickshire Authority, who won't assume sort of full control until the 1st of April 2028. But I think in practice, they will be more and more involved in sort of decisions. There'll be sort of like a existing council phase, a joint phase, and then they're largely led by the new council phase as we get closer to 2028. That seems the rational way it would work.
I think it'll be a question of the old soldiers will have to fade away. Councillor Rolfe.
Thank you, Tony. So has a decision been made about where head office will be? Will it be here, Warwick, or a new building, or somewhere in the middle?
There's been no formal decision made about that. I think I could rule out a new building prior to sort of vesting day. It would ultimately be a matter for the shadow authority, and then as they take power, where they wish to headquarter themselves. As officers, we're sort of, one of the things that we'll need to do is divide the county-owned assets between the north and the south. So there will be, whether Shire Hall ends up in sort of the south or the north, we would look to use existing facilities for sort of economic and sort of practical reasons. But yeah, that debate hasn't been concluded yet.
Councillor Johnson.
We're about to go into the process of establishing the 27-28 budget. Are we clear who will be setting the 28-29 budget? Presumably that'll be the shadow authority.
Yes, from the 1st of April 2028, that will be a matter for the new authority, because they will be up and running by that time.
No, I think the question was, the budget for 28-29 has to be set in 27-28 when the shadow authority. So I make the assumption that the shadow authority will have to go through the budget preparation process to be able to deliver the budget that they have approved.
We'll have had to set the council tax level, surely. We'll be collecting it from the 1st of April. So sometime in February, I'd expect this decision to be made.
Yes, I agree.
That would be February 28. Yes. Councillor Waller-Hoggins.
Yes, thank you. I'm just trying to get a timescale, please, on the original matter that I asked. So we know there's going to be 3 members from Stratford on the working group. When was that decided, please, and agreed?
Central government put out a proposal to us in earlier in the summer, so I think it was around about May time, where they proposed initially that there would be 4 members from districts on the joint committee. We were allowed, if we could agree unanimously, to put alternative proposals to them, but those proposals had to be supported by all of the councils within sort of Warwickshire. There was unanimous agreement to move that to a 6 and 6 solution, but it was a government proposal, and they've now accepted that. So that the proposal from government was in May. We responded to it, suggesting could we go with 6, and I think they confirmed that during July. But it was a central government decision about how the joint committee is formed. We couldn't pick however many we wanted, but we could put alternative proposals to them, and we got that up from 4 to 6.
So just to confirm then, we knew in July that we were going to have 6 and 6, that's 3 from here and 3 from Warwick, and we still don't know who the representatives from Stratford District Council is. Is that correct?
Yes, I don't think there's been a formal decision made on that.
Thank you.
Could you just then confirm when the joint committee will actually have any work to do?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Councillor Ballinger. Good morning.
Good morning. In regards to staff morale, just in general, I completely understand and appreciate that. I'm sure some staff don't know if they're coming or going, because obviously, we're about to transition in to a new authority. Just want to understand and just cap off from a staff welfare, put my HR hat on. How are they, and is there anything that we can do as members to support?
It is a time of uncertainty for staff, and it worries some more than others. Generally, I think staff morale is reasonably good, probably better than I would have expected. We've been as transparent and open with staff as we can be. David and I took the decision that was the way to sort of do things from the start. So people are well briefed about what's going on, and at sort of general working sort of level, changes should be relatively small in the initial stages, because people will still need to process planning applications, housing benefit applications. We'll still need to do environmental health inspections. We'll still need to prepare a budget. So initially, changes, people will still come to the same place and they'll just be paid by a different authority. That will sort of gradually change over time. But at the moment, the staff morale is reasonably good.
Can I just ad hoc add that I was speaking to a senior but junior member of staff, member of middle management, so to speak, who has been around the block before, been through a reorganisation before, and her view was that it was understandable that some staff would feel unsettled, but those old hands who've been around know that not a lot is likely to change in the short term, and it'll be gradual change. There'll be the people who are most affected are the people at the top, because that will change immediately, so to speak. But I think it's a relevant question. Staff morale is always a relevant question. Councillor Crump.
Yeah, and I think that was a really good question from Councillor Ballinger, so thank you for that, Tom. It just leads on to my point that it's probably more, it's in the performance monitoring report, and I'd picked up that the number of sick days full-time equivalent is increased, and it says largely due to an increase in longer-term absences relating to mental health, stress and anxiety. So whether that's related to as well. I noticed there's been mitigating steps in terms of occupational health, so I see it has been addressed, but there may be a correlation between the two, and they might be completely unrelated, but I think it's pertinent that we note these and ask officers to continue their efforts to mitigate this and support members of staff as best as they can.
Thank you for that, Councillor Crump. I'm sure officers will have taken that note. Are there any... I'm sure HR staff in particular are sensitive to the issues. Yeah. Are there any other questions for Mr. Perks? No? In which case, we'll move on to... Thank you very much for that, Mr. Perks. There's more to suffer, don't worry. Item 8. Items for the Cabinet papers. Within the Cabinet papers, I presume you have your copies with you. The first item we are going to discuss is item 4, performance monitoring report for Q1. Mr. Perfield is not about. I don't know whether he's ill or on holiday.
I can introduce it, that would be helpful.
That would be helpful, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the standard report that you receive each quarter as part of your scrutiny role, is to sort of review the sort of performance of the councils. These are the indicators that were agreed by Cabinet sort of following consultation with you earlier in the year. And this report presents the performance for Q1 26-27 under the identified headings that you've requested. So rather than sort of run through it, I'll let you ask me questions.
Okay. Would it be an idea to go through this logically, page by page by page, and people, rather than dot about, will deal with questions as they arise in the order of the paper? Is that reasonable? Okay. So we're on page 19 of the papers. CPI, CP1A and CP1B. Any questions? Next page. Councillor Littlewood.
Yes, thank you. Bottom of page 19, CP1B, the last item, manage to implement the introduction of building safety levy. In the progress comments, there is an intention. Yeah. The intention is for the new software to be up and running by October 26. We're very close to October 26. Is this intention now an expectation, please?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd mark that as a question as well. Moving on to page 20, I note that in the bottom quadrant there's reference to resignation of key staff, which I think may have been alerted to by Councillor Crump. Councillor Worley-Hoggins, we have a question.
I'm still very concerned about enforcement, which is at the first quadrant on page 20. Again, I think it's quite woolly. There's been an awful lot of discussion to do with enforcement on regulatory. I still haven't had sight of key performance indicators. We've been asking for some time. I've received no information regarding the backlog. So I'm to say that it's still ongoing. We do need to. I'm unhappy that we're still looking at March 2027 for this to be. for this to be sorted out, I would have thought the date needed to be much tighter than that. There was an expectation, in fact, that it wouldn't be till the end of the 4 years of this council, that actually that date is actually much more urgent, given the Mr. Perks, you're well aware of the many discussions that have happened at regulatory about enforcement. So I'm not sure that date is correct, and whether ongoing is satisfactory. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Given that we haven't got somebody from the relevant department present, can I suggest that that's a point you might like to pursue at Regulatory Committee more productively than here? Councillor Ballinger.
Again, on page 20, Chair, at the top in the far right-hand column, it says vacancies with the team successfully filled. So my question is, have they been onboarded, and are they successfully in post, actively doing the job? And then second of all, audit of service underway and more detailed information sheet on performance and preparation. I would like to understand a bit more around what is going to be in that information before it is prepared, if that's okay, Chair.
Could you your second point, can you just refer me to the precise point on the sheet?
Audit of service underway and more detailed information sheet on performance in preparation.
And I think there's a typo on that one as well. It says Q1 performance about target for both KPIs. Should that be above target for KPIs?
I'm sure Mr. Perks will enlighten us.
I'm trying to take your example of pedantry to the limit, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, the performance indicators that were requested for enforcement are being reported to you on page 34. And I believe this came out of the Regulatory Committee and their sort of work, which was reducing the number of pending enforcement cases. And we have achieved that indicator for Q1. And updating notify on progress of investigation reported urgent level 1 breaches within 3 weeks of receipt. We set a target of 90%. We've achieved that. So those two, I think, perhaps above would be an appropriate reference for. In terms of the information sheet on performance side, I can get you details of what that's concerning. I'm sorry, I don't have that level of detail with me. And in terms of the vacancies that have been successfully filled, I'll have to get back to you the details of sort of exactly how far we are when those officers are, but I can take that away.
I think you can make the presumption that if officers appointed aren't satisfactory, HR will sort it out. Can we move on? Page 21, pretty short. Page 22. Any questions? I'm on now page 24, but if somebody wants to come back, Councillor Littlewood.
Yeah, page 23, please.
Page 23.
Yeah, CP2B, final item. We have a due date on July 26, and it's ongoing and it's on track. Really, we're now some time on from that. What really is the status of that, please? This is to review the top pressures for the district in relation to housing, homelessness and learning from best practice in the sector.
Well, we have the right officer in front of us.
We do indeed. So this report is for the first quarter, so it reflects performance up until the end of June. So that's why, obviously, we're reviewing it in September. But we have completed our homelessness needs assessment, and the work in relation to the homelessness and rough sleeping strategy, which forms part of the wider housing strategy, is all underway and on track. So that piece has been completed. So when you get your Q2 report, you'll see that that's been complete.
Thank you for that.
Perhaps, Chair, if I could make a suggestion that a little bit more description around in general terms about what's ongoing and whether it is a continuous report on a quarterly or monthly basis, that it is indicated as such. Thank you.
So you mean you'd like sufficient information so that you don't need to ask that sort of a question?
Absolutely.
Correct. Understood. Councillor Ballinger, then I'll come to Councillor Warren Harkins. Councillor Ballinger.
On page 22, the update, this is the third point down, to update the information available on the website and social media to ensure the residents can self-serve where possible in relation to housing and revenue queries. Are we going to do anything on the app at all to support, ease of, residents being able to actively look at stuff? Is there going to be something on the app, and if not, would that be an opportunity to do something?
I can certainly take that away as an action. Yeah.
Yeah, it was to look at, on page 22, to look at the usage of customer access terminals. We're still waiting further data. I'm a bit of a loss to this, because we know that hasn't the Southam terminal been broken for a while? Why are we waiting now? Surely we should have. Perhaps it would be good to have information coming forward to us as to how much it's being used. Surely we have that information. I mean, why are we waiting until September? Because it is a cost and an expense to this council.
Can we have an update on customer access terminals then?
Yes, you can have an update on them. I don't think anybody really uses them, and I think they're a thing from times past. They get very little use, but there seems to be a reluctance to sort of move on from them. They're not costing us a lot of money because we've made the investment, and they sit there when people want to use them. They do use them, and we're sort of happy moving on them, but there doesn't seem to be a vast sector of the population who want to use that technology anymore.
Can I just come in on that one?
Councillor Crump, yes.
It's
from Southam.
Yeah, it is. And, the principal at the time, I think it was Councillor Roxbaby, that one. And I think we did say at the time, was it a wise value use of officer time? I know the officer physical costs weren't particularly extortionate, but the officer time associated and supported of this was could have been quite costly, and also it tends to be not working all the time. So I think it's glad it's been acknowledged that it's not really pertinent now. But I think we do need to make sure people who still need help accessing our services get the access as well. But I don't think that was probably the right way to do. The intention was good, but the overall effectiveness is poor in my opinion.
Thank you for that inside knowledge. Can we move on? Page 24. Any questions? Page 25. You have to be quick.
Yeah, 24, just very, very quickly. Again, I know we're limited on what we can put in the box, and I do sympathise with officers. Ongoing green progress on our actions, but 56% haven't been commenced by the first quarter. So that's more than half. So therefore, hopefully, again, we just need some reassurance that those 56%, which haven't been started by the 1st of July, are likely to be done in the time. Thank you. 56%.
Yeah, there might be a need for an interpretation of that number. Could you provide that interpretation?
Yeah, so this particular action is horrible. And I did explore with Nick, who's our communities and social inclusion manager, whether we could look at something different and pick a number of key actions from the Go Plan to draw out instead, because you'll be aware from having seen the Go Plan when you approved it a couple of months ago that there are an absolute plethora of actions within that. So the red is the bit that you might want to be concerned about, the 1%, because they're the things that should be further ahead than they are. I'm not worried at all about the uncommenced actions, because there's a whole load of actions, some of which are not scheduled to have even started. And if they were uncommenced, and they should have been, and we should be further along, they would be in that red section. But it's a really difficult one with the Go Plan, because I can't think off the top of my head how many actions there are, but there's pages and pages of an action plan. And perhaps one of the things that I think we've got is a midterm review of the Go Plan. So I think that will give you some of that more tangible detail, because you could have a paper as long as this entire council plan paper, all about the Go Plan and the progress.
I think that's a good illustration of, if you don't play with the numbers and understand how the numbers are constructed, when you're presented with a summary, it's easy to misinterpret and get the wrong message. And I'm grateful to Mrs. Buckley for that clarification. Page 25, Mr. Councillor Ballinger, did you have a question?
It's on page 24 and page 25 overlaps, and you have to pinch the page to see part of the wording, but at the bottom it says to deliver a new housing allocations policy which prioritises housing those greatest need, including a homeless IT system. It says it's on track and goes live for registration on the 15th of September. Could you just explain a bit more about that, and also is it still on track for the 15th of September?
I'm pleased to say it absolutely is. Anybody that's ever delivered a new system implementation will know the level of nerves that I have been carrying over the past few months, and will do until we are all up with everybody re-registered. So you'll be aware that we approved the allocations policy. That policy has had one minor amend to reflect the law around renters reform. That policy will be implemented through the new system. We have closed any new applications that happened mid-August, and that's effectively so that we don't have somebody applying to join on the 1st of September and then we're saying to them 2 weeks later, you need to re-register. It's going to be frustrating enough for those that joined mid-August, but there just has to be a cut-off that balances that and then also access to the system. So in this month's period, we are doing all of the sort of the close down of the old system. We will then be working to transfer across any of our housing register applicants who are also homeless. We're going to transfer those across. We've asked anybody who needs additional support to get in touch with us so that we can understand what that looks like, and that also we can do that in a planned way, because the last thing that we want for our colleagues on front reception or within the housing team, or indeed anybody else that needs to access the council services on the 15th of September, is for everybody to walk through the door on that day. So we are doing some work with the CAB. They're going to join these sessions with our customer service colleagues so that regardless of which one of the desks that they go to, that they get the same message. And we have got a 6-week period to re-register everybody. So anybody that re-registers within that 6-week period will retain their original application date. Now, obviously, if somebody was in hospital across that 6-week period, you know, we've got the ability to exercise discretion. And if they get a higher banding, as is the case with the current system, if you get an improved position, it's from the date that improvement is made. But anybody that is the same or gets a reduced banding, they will retain their original date, provided they apply within the 6 weeks. But I'll be sending out some further information to all of you, similar to what I did just before the closure ahead of the re-registration. And then the thing that I'm really looking forward to is the fact that we'll be able to provide some really regular data around who's on our housing register and what do we know about them, because you'll be aware from the update that I did to all councillors ahead of the closure, we've got a lot of people on our register that don't appear to be an urgent housing need, that are perhaps sitting and waiting, and that's really distorting our ability to understand who's in need.
No, that was a very full answer. I'm not going to allow you a supplementary because we do need to make progress. I just want to point out to Mrs. Buckley that she really does need to continue to worry that the system is up and running on the 16th of September. Can I ask a question on page 26? And that relates to the Gateway site. Is there a succinct summary of where we are and what actions we might expect in what sort of timescale, please?
Yes, Chair, I can take that one. We have working with two partners on the Gateway site, the West Midlands Combined Authority on the site close to Arden Street. On that part of the site, they are in advanced stages of preparing their planning application for a residential-led development in line with the SPD master plan that was approved a couple of years ago by Council. They're in active pre-application discussions with our development management colleagues at the moment, and we will be expecting a full application for that at the start of the year. The combined authority's intention is to secure a sort of planning consent, and alongside that seek a development partner to implement that. We're thinking that's likely to be an institutional landlord based on the type of development, so that's progressing. They will actually make 2 planning applications, one for the former office buildings and one for the listed terrace that's on, I'm not sure if it's Birmingham Road or whether it's which road it is there. I think it's Birmingham Road still at that point. That will come in separately, and that consent will be based on sort of conversion to keeping it as residential, but conversion to more of a flatted development rather than townhouses, in line with the previous planning application there. At the other end of the site, on our Windsor Street car park end, we have we're working with the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. We've produced 2 reports recently, one from Localis about the value of sort of culture and heritage to the general economy. We're presenting that to a subcommittee of Parliament on Tuesday. We're also working with BDP, who are their architects, about the concept of how the Shakespeare Storehouse would take shape, how the site would be developed in line with the master plan. And that is going to go alongside a sort of a funding piece. We are looking to potentially enter into a joint venture with the Birthplace Trust to see that moving forward. In practical terms as well, we have a planning application due to be made on the 15th of September for the demolition of all of the buildings on the site, so the buildings formerly owned by Peter Warwick and the Windsor Street car park, to clear the site ready for development, because we have quite a significant sort of business rates liability on the land that we took as part of the transfer with the WMCA. We're looking to use that money to cover the demolition and make that site sort of ready for development. And at the Windsor Street end, we Cabinet have resolved that it's with the ongoing complaints that we have about the accessibility and the sort of antisocial behaviour issues in that car park, we will remove that at the same time, and we'll return that as a surface car park whilst the developments discussions with the Birthplace Trust and taking the Shakespeare Storehouse go forward.
Thank you. Can I make the suggestion that this is it's probably the most important site in the middle of Stratford for redevelopment. It's got a long history of negotiations and complications. I'm sure that particularly councillors who sit for Stratford seats have regular questions from residents. And I'm sure the Cabinet will want to make sure that they are fully informed on a timely basis, but I don't think the need of backbench councillors, so to speak, is any less. Can I make the suggestion that, and it's only a suggestion, that this might be a suitable topic for a briefing note to be issued as a point of information, for provision of information solely to all councillors.
I would second that.
Can you just take note of that? There is some support for that, and I'll leave it in your hands. Okay, moving on. Page 27. There's not much on 27. And plans now in place. 28. Councillor Ballinger.
Thank you, Chair. Previously, I just want to say thank you to the officer for the work regarding the new process and system that has been implemented, and that was what I wanted to say, Chair. Oh. But second of all, I just wanted to raise something on page 27 in relation to develop the digital profile of the Visitor Information Centre, working in partnership with partners across the hospitality and tourism sector. I just want to note that it's been achieved, and just wanted to understand a bit more about that, if that's okay.
Is there anything more to be known in 10 seconds?
Hannah?
Can I suggest you pop into the Visitor Information Centre and see the digital screens to keep it very brief, but I'm quite happy to have a follow-up conversation with you afterwards.
Seeing is believing. Go and have a look. Fine. Page 28.
I'll just have a quick point on
Councillor Crump.
Not on CP3A, not C3PO. It's the task and finish group that following the Housing Transport Summit about improved access to healthcare for individuals in remote areas within infrequently public transport routes. I think Hannah mentioned it, and I totally agree that should be part of task and finish group terms of reference, because getting access to places can cost money if you haven't got a bus or you haven't got a Vasa or Carver or public transport organisation. So I think that's quite pertinent. But then I did notice the point about competing demands, which when you get several organisations together, they sometimes do have them. So, and I think it's a really relevant point, and I think we should be considering that. So I do sympathise with the officers as well.
Sure. I'm noted. I can tell you from personal experience that it's even worse than that. If you live in a place like Armscott, if you've got a problem, health problem, and you haven't got a car, there is no public transport. So you're dependent upon neighbours or taxis or whatever. It's even worse. Sure. Are these permanent jobs or not?
They're permanent jobs, but the funding for them is reviewed in the budget each year.
And I'm glad we've got Councillor Curtis in the audience who's just heard that. Thank you. Thank you for that. Page 30, questions on page 30. Councillor Crump.
Yeah, to do with the opportunities for commercial partnership development of EV chargers and STC car parks. Is this additional ones? Because I know there's been some issue with EV charging, particularly in Wood Street. I know in Southam there have been. So is this to rectify that problem and also install additional ones? Thank you.
Mr. Burks?
Yes, the tender looks for proposals for installing EV charging across the district. We've gone to the open market to see what they're proposing to us. We're due to get the tenders back in September, so sort of any time now. Just picking up the specific points, the chargers that were in some of the town car parks like Southam and Ulster and Bidford were with BP Pulse, who withdrew from that. So we are looking to get those moved over to a different provider. There's some issue with the software that seems to be making that more complicated than it needs to be, but hopefully that will be solved any day now, and that will be back on whilst we look at the sort of longer term solution.
Councillor Ballinger.
Can I just follow on from Councillor Crump, please, regarding EV chargers? I do want to say thank you extremely much to Hannah Heath, who's been working incredibly hard on this situation. I have got residents regarding EV charging who are calling out every day near enough. I get messages, emails regarding the need for use of EV chargers, and Hannah has worked extremely hard at trying to sort this out very quickly as well. So thank you very much. And it is frustrating at the moment that we do have this bug issue with the BP, but she has been updating me pretty much every day, telling me where they are. So thank you very much.
I'm sure that will be passed on. I'm conscious that we haven't got to the revenue scrutiny, which we need to. So I'm wondering if we can make progress.
Just a quick one, if I may.
Sure.
And it's my ignorance. How does this relate to the solar panels on the leisure centre car park, if it does at all?
Yes, it does. We are also running that project. That's out for design at the moment for a solar array. It looks like we'll be installing 3 arrays over the car park and a battery unit. The majority of that electricity can be used by the leisure centre. At peak demand, at peak harvesting time, we generate more electricity than the leisure centre can use. So we're going to feed that into a battery. That battery will be available to the EV charging people so that the solar array is the electricity is used by the leisure centre, then the EV, and then it's in the battery. And as a last resort, if all of that gets full up, we will export to the grid. But we're looking to maximise the use of the electricity that we harvest either through the leisure centre or through the EV charging infrastructure.
Okay, page 31. Page 32 is blank. Page 33. Page 34. Councillor Crump.
Yeah, two things. Building control applications, target 85%. We're now up to 57%, up from 49. Again, still significantly below the target. I know the appointment of an agency, RBI, to help, but again, I assume we're all in the same position trying to recruit staff, so therefore making it difficult to achieve. So I'll note that, and can please progress be made, reported to us on a regular basis. And the other one, more quickly, the recycling contamination rate. Whilst we are achieving a significantly high recycling rate, I notice we're 20% above our contamination rate target. So again, if we can take steps to do that, because it's no good if it's significantly contaminated. So again, thank you.
Thanks for that. My question in relation to the building control issue is, do officers feel that the target of 85% is likely to be achieved before the end of the year? Because I suspect that's what members of the committee would want to see. Open question. I'm sure they're working hard at it.
Yes, I think as you correctly described, the performance dipped quite markedly through quite a lot of building control applications being received and coinciding where the number of key members of staff left. As I think, as Councillor Crump has correctly identified, it's a very difficult market to recruit and retain appropriately professionally qualified building control staff. And in the wake of what went on at Grenfell and some of the legislation come in, those requirements around professional accreditation of the staff are much more exacting than they used to be. We've recently effectively slightly restructured within the service and have appointed a new manager. There's a sort of plan in place to address the backlog, and as you will see, whilst performance fell markedly in the last quarter of last year, it's on an improving trajectory, assisted by some temporary resource measures we've got in to do that. I would expect that track to carry on, and so I would expect in quarter two that 57% performance to improve further, and within the course of the year to be able to get back to about 85%. Of course, what that does mean is I think it will be very challenging to deliver the 85% over the entirety of the current year when your first performance first quarter's performance is at 57%. So whilst we're on track to do it, and frankly with the state of the market to get qualified people in, our ability to throw further resource at it is actually somewhat curtailed. I think we will recover that 85% performance, but in a way that means it is, I can't guarantee that we'll hit it over the entirety of the year, which is how the indicator is supposed to be done.
Yep, I think that points to a helpful piece of information that you could provide next time round, which would be what is the quarter performance rather than the annual performance. But I think the committee would take comfort from the fact that if the 85% figure isn't achieved for the year as a whole, which is probably unlikely, it won't be through lack of effort. Okay, page 34, then Councillor Rice.
Just to show that I've read the report, there is a typo on page 34. It should be 250,000, not over 1 million. As regard, three up from the bottom, over 1 million visits. I think the arithmetic suggests it should read 250,000.
The million is an annual target, and your maths is very good, because 250,000, which was the first quarter, we should be at 250,000 at quarter one, but it's an annual target for the million. So it's often confusing, that one.
Can we not? 35. Page 36. Page 36. Councillor Rolfe.
Thank you. I know we've discussed this about sickness in staff, etc. I sit on the Respect and Wellbeing group, and we are, I know Councillor Wally Hoggins does as well, and we are working very closely with staff. You know, together, we are working together. But if there is anything that we need to do, anything more that we need to do, I think it's something that we can bring up at the next meeting, and we will do. Okay.
Thank you for that reassurance. Councillor Ballinger.
Thank you, Chair. Just put my HR hat back on. There's lots of legislation changes in employment law going on this year and next. Specifically this year, there is a change in the law regarding prevention of sexual harassment in the workplace. And what I would be interested to know is if we could add that as a KPI on this, just so we can, as part of training and making sure that staff members have been trained, officers have been trained on prevention of sexual harassment, but equally I think it's incredibly important that members have the opportunity to receive training also. And I'd just be interested to understand your thoughts, because it is a very, very serious subject, and it's becoming law this year in October.
I don't think that's something that I can respond to immediately. I think officers from a training point of view and from a HR departmental point of view will have taken note, and I'm sure they'll come forward with an amendment to the KPIs if they, or make a suggestion of an appropriate KPI adjustment if they think that's merited. Thank you for that. Page 37, and we're on to the graphics. Does anybody want to raise any questions about the graphics? No, I take it that's fine. In which case we'll move on to item 6 on the Cabinet's agenda, which is the neighbourhood development plans, and we have Mr. Nelson with us. Mr. Nelson, would you like to introduce the paper, please?
I certainly will try. I'll give you a brief overview and then happy to take any questions. Clearly, members will be aware that through the budget process, we budgeted £100,000 every year for the next 3 years to assist parish and town councils in producing reviews of neighbourhood development plans. Clearly, government has frankly cut the funding available to support parish councils, and so to a certain extent the council was trying to step into that place to ensure that parishes feel supported. As you're aware, by virtue of the position that the council finds itself in not having an adequate land supply over there, it means that unfortunately many of the historic neighbourhood plans that the parishes have put in place, even some of those which have been prepared in the past 5 years, can no longer carry full weight in planning determinations, particularly because of the issue with not having identified sufficient sites on the back of the revised government requirements around house building that came about in December 2024. So with where we are in terms of the emerging South Warwickshire local plan and parishes getting an idea of where that strategic framework for the district lies, this is now a suitable timing to start engaging and trying to encourage and assist parish councils to update their NDPs. And the report looks at a number of options for effectively how to spend that money, to allocate it, and effectively it suggests a rather simple but straightforward approach and sets out another couple of options to do it. I think if you're happy with it, I'll leave that there and take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? In essence, the change seems to be that instead of allocating £100,000 over 3 years, the decision's been to bring it all in one go, and it'll be open to any parish council that's got an existing NDP to make an application for funding.
It won't just be open to anything that's got an existing NDP. If there are parishes that have never produced an NDP Previously, it would equal the funding's available equally to support them. In practice, I suspect the vast majority will be people who've already produced NDPs looking to keep them up to date, because that's a far less onerous task to be done, but the funding would be sufficiently flexible. Clearly, for each plan that needs to be updated, there's a process around it that in practice will take a minimum of 18 months and may in fact take 2 years to 2 to 3 years. So we won't be committing all the £300,000 in the first year, but it makes sense to budget flexibly so we can engage with discussions about funding, because I would imagine I think it's unlikely we would spend the full £100,000 in what remains of the current year, but I would imagine more of the money will find its way out in the second year of that funding arrangement.
Thank you. I know that you just mentioned there's a process available for parish councils to update their NDP, but is there like a best practice to support them? So there's a process, but is there like a best practice of this is what a good NDP looks like for people, just so that they are on the right tracks?
There was quite a bit of guidance produced a few years ago by an organisation called Localis. That still remains relevant and is available on the as on various websites. We're happy to signpost NDPs, parishes, to that source of information, and I think it just may be helpful for people to note. Clearly, the government has updated the MPPF recently. It hasn't significantly changed the role of parishes, neighbourhood development planning within that. So that previous best practice guidance pretty much remains relevant as far as I can see.
Thank you for that. Am I accurate in suggesting that there is general support amongst the members of the OSC that the Cabinet should accept these recommendations? Is that a sound conclusion to come to? I'm getting nods, so I'll assume that's the case. Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson. We move on to Cabinet Paper number 11. No. I'm just wondering whether you're going to, Mr. Borrell, whether you're going to sit down in a warm seat or it's going to be a cold seat. It's a cold seat, yeah. Fine. We have the usual paper in front of us for to do with capital. Are there things you would like to tell us?
Thank you, Chair. No, it's a standard report, period 4 of the capital expenditure that we've spent this year. But in addition to that capital programme, there is the listings of Section 106 and SEAL monies committed and uncommitted, which may be of interest.
Is there anything you want? Is there anything you're worried about under this heading of the capital budget? Do you lose any sleep at all?
There's nothing in the capital that gives me any concern. There's quite a lot of Section 106 that's getting quite old, and it would be good to see some of that moved on, to be honest.
Yes, understood.
And that is all listed out there. There is a column to the right-hand side that gives the date of expiry. We've recently been able to use 3 of them on some playfields expenditure, 100,000, that's recently been worked on. So some of that was nearly 20 years old, some of that 106, and it's the small amounts that we find very difficult to get spent, because you can't build a playground for less than 100,000, and when you get a Section 106 money of 20,000, it's very difficult to use it meaningfully when there's a restriction as to where that money can be spent.
Sure. Yeah, understood. Do members of the committee have any questions on capital? Councillor Littlewood.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have it's a general question, really. I'm looking at the slippage, which continues to be there. It's been growing over the last 4 years, 3.5 years that I've been looking at this. And with a mind to a unitary authority coming in, it is quite clear that slippage will continue into that era. What arrangements can be made to ring fence that money in terms of slippage so that the projects remain funded?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Well, I'm working with the finance group for local government reorganisation, and any projects that are committed will need to be funded, so that money will need to be allocated in the new authority to deliver what has previously been agreed. Capital by nature does take or can take more than a year to deliver. You referred to higher slippage in previous years. Yeah, that's because we were carrying some money that related to the purchase of the refuse vehicles. Those vehicles have been purchased now, so that money's been spent. The new authority, if they knew there were refuse vehicles coming, they can't take away the funding from it, because they'll still end up with the liability because the order's gone in for them. So that is a coordinated approach by all 6 authorities that's currently underway.
Thank you. That's a clear answer, and I'm grateful for that. I'd just like to go back to the question. In no way did I imply any criticism. It's just a fact that capital projects take time, and I wanted to make sure that the security of those projects will be maintained through to the new authority. And thank you.
Thank you, Councillors. Well, I think what you're really saying is that slippage is an awful word. There must be a better term for delayed projects.
We have had this discussion at
Cabinet, we've had it before.
And we're going to use a different term in the future.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
for the last year.
Fine. Okay. In which case, I'm going to move on to item 12 on the Cabinet's agenda, the revenue budget, which I think might be produce more discussion, more questions. Would you like to? Is there anything you'd like to say about the paper?
There is something I'd like to say, because one of the figures in the report is not accurate. It has come to light since the report was produced, and that is in paragraph 5.1.3. I've got the actual report, so I don't know what page that's on. Thank you. And that relates to the property unfavourable variance that's been quoted at 400,000. That variance should be 266 unfavourable, so it's £134,000 less. The property section of that paragraph refers to an unfavourable variance of 400,000, and it should read 266,000. It does relate, the majority of it does relate to the increased costs of cleaning the public conveniences and opening and closing them throughout the district, which has been a very troublesome contract to conclude on.
I have to say that was one of the questions one of the items I had marked down for a question. 400,000 is a large variance. 266 is a smaller variance, but it's still significant, and it begs the question, at the surface at least, why a contract for known services is so far adrift from where it was intended to be. Is there something else going on that we don't know, or that you know?
Could I defer to Mr. Perks, because he's waving his hand at me about this one?
I don't mind which of us answers it. I think this primarily relates to problems we've had finding a contractor who's prepared to open and close the public conveniences in line with the council's requirements, because we have public conveniences located all around the district, and they all close at approximately the same time. It's been challenging to find somebody who can provide that service for us. We tried to approach sort of local town and parish councils and other organisations, and that was fairly fruitless. So we've ended up having to pay quite a significant premium. I think it's to Biffa, who were prepared to do it, but not at the rates that we'd previously managed to get from other cleaning contractors. But we have found a solution to this, which has allowed us to maintain these valuable services in the sort of more rural areas, but it's come at a cost. I think part of that is also sort of the increases in sort of living wage and sort of national insurance and all the things that you hear about, putting the cost of labour up more generally, and the availability of labour has made that a challenging contract to let.
Okay. So I make the assumption that the budget for next year will be a bigger budget under this particular heading,
Yeah, absolutely.
out of necessity.
The budget will reflect what we're having to pay now, but it is what I was going to say. It's standard practice here to, well, not with every contract, but we do indicate the budget available when we put contracts out to tender. So what we didn't want to do is artificially inflate a budget that then gives the green light to a contractor to submit a higher bid. So we kept the budget as it's been for a number of years, and it has been done at that level for a number of years. But yeah, this revised contract, or this new contract, is significantly higher.
Would it be unfair to say you were in seeking tenders, you're trying it on a bit?
We were going through the competitive process that we were required to do, yes.
Councillor Littlewood.
Thank you. Sorry to be a bit pedantic about this, but I'm looking at 4.1.3, the third item, which is third bullet, which is property shows an unfavourable variance of 103,913 due to increased public convenience, utility and cleaning costs. That is lower than the 256 that we've just been discussing. Is it a different issue? It needs to be identified more clearly, I think.
Yeah, the first section of this report reports on the variances that we've identified in the first 4 months. The second half of the report reports on the variances we anticipate to exist at the end of the financial year when all the known expenditure over budget happens. So, yeah, it's overspending right from the start of the year, because the budget for this year was set this time last year, and that contract value hadn't been concluded on at that time, so we couldn't incorporate it into this year's budget.
Thank you, Chair. I should read the title at the top of the section.
Fear not, I have made exactly the same mistake, and Mr. Burrell will tell you all about it. Can I just draw attention to off-street parking, a surplus of 30k? This does not mean, does it, that Stratford has had the benefit of an upsurge, an inflow, a vast inflow of tourists. 30k plus or minus is neither here nor there against the budget of nearly £1 million. Is that correct?
Yeah, the income budget for parking, I believe, is over 3 million, so 30,000 is extremely close to zero.
Yeah.
Such a large budget. So it shows an improvement on last year. It certainly does, because we were down on income.
Yeah.
So it is in a position where we budgeted, I would suggest.
Yeah. Fine. Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Crump.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a couple of things. Whether we can do anything about it. I know we've got some significant write-offs to do with NDR on section 3.2. Mainly, if I'm reading this correctly, and I'm sure Mr. Burrell will correct me if I'm not, due to the fault of the VOA. Is there any chance we can claim any liability back from them? Because £138,000 on the business rates is quite significant. So I doubt whether we could, but it is disappointing that the VOA has made these mistakes that we're eventually having to pick up through, is it through the business rate pool?
Yeah, we're no longer in a pool, so we'll have to bear the cost of, well, 40% of the cost of that. So the second one, it's a well, both of them are bills that shouldn't have been raised, basically. They're cancellations rather than a write-off, but because we can't go back through previous rating years, we can't action it, if that makes sense. So it's in VOA terms, the years are very discrete, and once they close a year, they won't reopen it again.
That figure of 111,000 strikes me as being exceptional. It's not a norm figure that we would see in this section of the paper. Can you put it into context of how is it unique? Is it over 100k, or can you put it into some sort of context, please?
It is a big sum of money. It's, you know, the business rates, you do get small amounts, you do get very large amounts if they're large businesses, but for a write-off, that is a large sum. But when you read the text, by the sounds of it, the VOA got the decimal point in the wrong place on the rateable value. Simple as that.
Unfortunate that we end up having to, or council ends up having to bear the cost of the valuation officer's mistake.
Can I just have one more?
Another nibble?
Yeah, please. You know, the decimal point in the wrong place. I always used to think that happened when I first picked up my wages. You know, I think the decimal point was in the wrong place. Yeah, just again, some preciseness, a bit of clarity on 4.1.4 legal services, an unfavourable variance of almost 77,000. The majority of this will be offset by recharge. The majority, say we spent £40,000, which would be the majority, would still have an unfavourable variance of 37,000. It's just a bit of preciseness. Thank you. Yeah.
Can I just make my usual point about investment income? You're over budget, and it's because interest rates have been higher than were assumed. I'll take a bet with you that the figure will be a higher variance still by the end of the year, because interest rates are going to go, if they're going to go anywhere, they are going to go up. They're not going to come down in the next 6-9 months. So that's likely a fiver you owe me, so you better start saving. Are there any other questions, or shall we move on?
Yeah, the legal overspend, it's a timing issue of us paying out for agencies and reclaiming that money back from Warwick District Council, because we supply the legal services to them. The majority of it is that. It's not showing itself in the second half of the report, so I wouldn't expect a variance greater than £10,000 either way by the end of the financial year. Otherwise, it would show itself in that second half of the report.
Yeah, again, and I know you've explained that. That is really helpful, but if a member of the public wasn't getting the explanation, it's fine. I know you're limited on how much time and space you can use and digging down, but it's just a bit of clarity, really. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Okay, I think we're done quizzing. Thanks very much indeed. We can move on to one of our remaining items, which is the work programme. Who would like to say something about the work programme?
I can say something about the work programme, if that'd be helpful.
Please.
One of the things that we have to do as a committee is to have a programme of work so that we can sort of make sure that you're basically scrutinising the way that you would like to. I'm just looking for the work programme, which Hannah's just provided for me. I was looking at the wrong agenda, which wasn't helping. I don't know what Angus's second name is, but I asked Mr. Angus to sort of put together the things that we'd got together so far, which we presented to you. It's your opportunity, really, to sort of set your agenda as a committee. If there's anything that you particularly want to scrutinise or any sort of information you want us to provide to you for scrutiny, the format of the meetings tends to follow a sort of a two-half type format. Like, for example, today we had Hannah presenting you with a cost of living type information for scrutiny. Then we've always got a duty to go through cabinet reports, which conventionally we've done in the second part of the meeting. So this is your opportunity to highlight any areas that you would like to have for your first part of the meeting, so that allows us to organise people to come in and present you the information that you want. It's within sort of the committee's terms of reference, it's free to you to sort of choose whatever you'd like to go in there. So with that introduction, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you. Do we have suggestions? Councillor Rolfe.
Can we just add to that the issue that you brought up, Councillor, about a paper on the Gateway development? Now, that is going to be a briefing. Certainly at previous meetings, we always add briefings. Is it going to be a paper briefing, or are we going to have it as a scrutiny item? I personally would like to have it on scrutiny item, but I appreciate that it's very Stratford-centric.
I agree with you. That my intention originally was that it should simply be a briefing paper in the same way that other briefing papers are issued in general. Nevertheless, despite the fact that it's in Stratford, is neither here nor there as far as I'm concerned. It's a major piece of work, a major project, and I think.
Well, I would like it to be part of the work programme if that's possible. Thank you.
I'm supportive of that. Just what do other people think? I'll take that as a yes then. Can we add at a suitable point when developments are at a stage where there's something to know and perhaps have a view about, that would be helpful. Fine. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Roth. Other questions, other suggestions? Councillor Worley-Hoggins?
I did wonder if we ought to have some sort of an update regarding the British Home Stores building in Stratford. I know it affects all of us because it is deteriorating quite badly, and I do think that it would just it doesn't have to be a long presentation, but I do think I'd like to know what we've done as a council to try to G people up about regarding that building. It's it affects all of us, including tourism, but it may be beyond the remit of overview and scrutiny. But I do think there are a number of people now be really beginning to wonder what on earth can we do about it? Is there anything that we have tried to do about it? And yes, I accept that there's possibly limitations to what we can do, but I think it'd be an interesting to and reassuring for our residents that we are looking into the matter. Thank you.
Well, I presume that's one of the reasons why the paper the Cabinet's got about forced auctions, or potentially forced auctions, is up for grabs when the BHS site is very much in mind. And I wonder whether it would be a reasonable thing to do to combine a briefing paper on the gateway with the BHS site.
Exactly.
And we can have a property session, so to speak. A property project session.
Thank you, Chair, because I would absolutely support that. It's a question I'm asked probably on a daily basis. This is Stratford Councillor, thank you.
I'm sure Mr. Nelson's got his pen in his hand, so I'm sure he's made a note of that. We can look forward to that. Thank you.
Can I just add a slight suggestion?
Sure.
If you were looking effectively at brownfield redevelopments in Stratford, and we were updating you on the Gateway site and on the BHS site, I guess the Canal Quarter would also be sensible to pick up at the same time.
Yeah. And the old cinema, please. The old cinema, if that's possible.
Can we leave it to your good discretion to come to a judgment about how much paper we can cope with all at one time, given we don't want to be here at 4 o'clock on a meeting day? Okay, thank you very much, but suggestions welcomed. Okay, in which case I'll move on, and we move now to the on-block items. The on-block item number 10, those minutes are noted. We move then to item 11, which is urgent business. We have one item of urgent business, which is the paper that has been circulated. At this point, would it be helpful to have an adjournment of, say, 10, 15 minutes? Shall we say 15 minutes? 15 minutes, and we'll reconvene at 12:30 for an introduction by the officer to take questions on the paper, after which we will then move into confidential session to deal with the information on blue paper.
Chair, at that stage, can we have the blue papers?
You can have them now. I was just saying.
Have them now.
Well, before you read it.
Thank you.
I'm not so sure that that's the case. I'm not sure, because I think we need to have the discussion about the paper that is public information without the blue paper, because the blue paper, it contains confidential information which you will get. But I think we best have the question and answer session in public, in ignorance of what's on the blue paper, and we can have the further conversation in private session with the benefit of the information in the blue paper. Otherwise, I suspect there is a danger of an inadvertent slip of information in the wrong session, so to speak. Hang on, I'm being told I need to read a message. The gist of the message from the monitoring officer is that the whole of the discussion should take place in confidential session, and that the outcome should be made public after we've had that discussion. So on that basis, I have to respect the advice of the monitoring officer. So I'm going to adjourn the meeting until 12:30, and we will then reconvene. Thanks for being so prompt. I've taken advice again from the monitoring officer, and there is a debate about whether how much of this discussion we can have in public and how much we can't, for basic reasons of commercial sensitivity and so on. So my proposed course of action is that I will invite Mr. Perks to present the paper, which is a public piece of information, so that we have that element of the presentation in public. And there will come a point where it will be appropriate for us, in order to protect confidentialities, to go into private session. I think I'll leave it at that at this stage. So, Mr. Perks, would you like to do the honours, please?
Thank you, Chair. I hope you now had the opportunity to read the paper, but I'll just sort of give a quick overview of the situation. We're talking about the 3 tonnes in sort of High Street, Ulster, which was damaged by a significant fire approximately 5 years ago. The building is a Grade 2 listed building. It occupies a prominent position in the sort of Ulster High Street. It was formerly a pub, and it's been essentially sort of destroyed by fire. So for the last 5 years, the building has been supported by an external scaffold, which is completely blocking the pavement on one side of Ulster High Street, which is probably our second most prominent high street within the district. We've been working with the owners of the building to try and get sort of the building reinstated. From what I can work out, there seems to be an issue with the amount for which the building was insured that meant the original owner wasn't in a position where they could put the building into a state of good repair. And in 2025, the building was sold at auction to its current owner. The building is causing sort of significant sort of local issues sort of within Ulster, and most of the enforcement routes available to us would involve us either carrying out sort of work in default or compulsorily purchasing the building. For example, we saw it's a listed repairs notice. Last week, the opportunity came up to acquire the building either through a direct bid or at an auction that will be conducted on the 10th of September. So the paper presents to Cabinet the options for them to decide whether or not they want to sort of make a bid for the property either at the auction or in advance of the auction. And the confidential appendices to the papers contain details of speculation about sort of the values that and the estimated costs of putting the building into good repair. And the second appendix contains some advice that we've received about sort of enforcement options from the West Midlands Heritage Trust, who we've been working with to try and sort of bring this building back into use. I think probably the final thing that's worth saying is that from the evidence that we've seen, the cost of putting the building into good repair is likely to exceed the final sort of value of the assets. So waiting for a commercial solution to this is unlikely to achieve the outcome we're looking for. Hopefully that's useful by way of introduction.
I'll allow questions of clarification, but not points of debate, which will have to await the confidential session. Councillor Littlewood.
I was going to suggest, it is a point of clarification, that as to debate this item properly, we do need to be discussing numbers, and I propose that we go straight through to a private session if that is the case. Although I do think that considering the sums involved, this is a matter of public interest.
It certainly is a matter of public interest, and it will be in due course. The information will become available when commercial sensitivities no longer apply. On that basis, then, I think it's appropriate now to move into private session, and so I will read the required notice that, pursuant to section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, the public be excluded from the remaining business of the meeting in view of the fact that the nature of the proceedings will be such that if the public were present, there would be likely be disclosure to them of exempt information under paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A to the said Act as amended. Therefore, we will now move into private session.